Welcome back to a brand new series, Muscle. Last time out, we took you right into the thick of it. The barge shootout, bullets flying, blood pumping. The moment that turned Carlton and the lads' lives upside down. That was the start of something big and dangerous. Now we ain't slowing down. This next chapter's got it all. The rush, the rage, and the raw power that comes when the stakes get higher and the tempers get shorter. So buckle up.
Chapter 1, Roid Rage. An old pal from West London, a bit of a face in his own manner, came up to Carlton one night in a club just after he started going out with his current girlfriend Kelly and asked how he was. Then he dropped his voice and said, "Got anything on you?" Carlton knew what he meant. Any weapon? He said, nah, I'm okay. Then he pulls out a 38 from under his shirt and says, "Do you want this?" No, he fucking didn't. And Carlton didn't want this prick offering him guns in front of his girlfriend. He got his teenage daughter Carly there too and some family friends, and he insisted, "Take it, mate. It's a bit of protection." "No thanks, pal." Carlton had seen too much damage done. But then he thought, hold on. Has this geezer heard something that he didn't know about? Does he think that Carlton needed protection? He's not part of his normal circle, but he seems to be picking up bad vibes involving him. What's going on? Carlton told him, "I'm all right. I don't need protection." But the doubt was there. Carlton knew something sinister was in the air. What did it all come to now? Geezer's trying to flog him a shooter while he was out with his family. I mean, things weren't right. If you live in a world of criminals, there are only two places you're going to likely end up: prison or in the graveyard. And Carlton didn't fancy either. He knew that from the moment he put a gun in his pocket, and he's not saying guns hadn't been in his possession a few times, but Carlton had to be prepared to use it. Guns aren't for show. They're the most powerful and destructive weapon you can have. And there's too many hotheads touting them around. It'd be so easy to get into a silly argument with someone when you were drugged up or drunk. He's carrying, he's pulled it out, and deep down, he doesn't want to shoot you, but now he's the Terminator. And he's got to use it to prove that he's tough and he's hard. The proper people in the underworld carry guns regularly, but it's different when you're working. You're doing a job, it's controlled. Tony Tucker carried a shooter, but only for protection when he was busy on criminal activities. At the end of the day, it couldn't save him, could it? There's an armory of guns out there if you want them. They're in the way, buried or stashed, sitting there till someone needs one, then destroyed or put back safely, depending on whether they've been used or not, and might be carrying incriminating evidence. If they've been fired, they're best out of the way. Carlton can get shooters from his connections at any time of the day or night, and he wouldn't hesitate to do so if someone hurt his children or any of his family. Come and hurt him anytime, but stay away from his family. That's personal, and that is a different code. The street's got its own laws, its own politics, and that's the way it goes. But drugs are changing a lot of that. You know, with drugs go lunatics, loaded guns, no principles, no underworld codes, and no honour amongst thieves. There's no doubts that drugs changed his life too. Carlton started taking steroids to build up his body to get those rippling biceps, that bull neck, to be the toughest guy in clubland, bursting out of his dinner jacket and bow tie. And Carlton ended up becoming a monster. He was the incredible Hulk of Essex, who could turn from a nice guy to a raging maniac in seconds. Just one wrong word, or if his toast wasn't done right, any small thing and Carlton was off on one. From taking the mild steroid Anavar, Carlton got hooked on stronger and stronger doses. He'd look in the mirror in the morning and see his muscles getting bigger and bigger, rippling with power like someone out of a Mr. Universe contest. Carlton had a really bad car crash in the late 80s, which laid him up for a few months. So he needed to build himself up again afterwards. So he started taking some heavy-duty steroids, injecting testosterone and sustanon. Anything he could get his hands on, oblivious to any damage, mental or physical, they might do. He'd always looked after himself. You know, he trained regularly, played a lot of football. So it wasn't as if Carlton was like some 7-stone weakling trying to build himself up to beat the beach bullies. No, he wanted more than fit. He wanted big. He wanted people to say, "Wow, look at that geezer. He looks the business." And of course, the bigger you were, the tougher you looked, the more the work kept rolling in. And yes, He's got to admit that vanity played a big part. I mean, Dorman are the vainest people in the world. You're on parade and you need to look the part. Carlton was Schwarzenegger. Carlton was Stallone. He's definitely a turn on for the women too. I mean, he's lost count the amount of times he got approached for sex while he's waiting on the door. The downside of steroids, though, is the terrible neurosis, the paranoia, the short fuse, the terrifying rages. He would get involved in near psychopathic road rage incidents all the time. If someone cut him up or did that wanker gesture, Carlton would just fucking go after them like a madman. Carlton once ripped the door off a car to get a bloke out who cut him up on a roundabout. Carlton chased him for 5 miles down the road before Carlton caught him, and this fella was fucking petrified. Another geezer shouted something out the window of his motor in Dagenham, so Carlton pulled straight across him at the lights, and the fella's locked his doors from inside, so Carlton just got up and put his fist straight through the windscreen. Another time, someone had parked in his space outside the Paradise Club in Islington. So Carlton got a few of his blokes out, all fucking lumps, and they took a corner of the car each and just bounced it down the road. As they were shunting it along, the owners come back and they just stood there open-mouthed as they watched them heaving it about like it was a lump of plastic or something. Carlton said, "Sorry, mate, but you were illegally parked." He wasn't about to start an argument with 6 heavyweight bouncers over his parking rights. Carlton now knew steroids are the most dangerous drugs that he'd ever taken in his life, and the damaging effects of the abuse will be him till the day he dies. He used to take steroid courses 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, but he found that over the 6 weeks he wasn't injecting them, he would start to feel weak. His body was just craving for more and more. Sometimes Carlton would take more even though he knew it would be fucking dangerous medically. Because his body had become so big and strong, he constantly needed more food. Carlton actually remembers the first time it happened was while they was out shopping in Lakeside. His whole body started shaking, demanding food to satisfy the steroid-induced hunger. It was like shoveling coal onto a blazing fire. After that, Carlton always used to carry screw-top jars of Heinz baby food around with him for a quick food fix. They contained all the nutrients and vitamins his body was crying out for. Carlton would take loads of them, all the flavours, beef, ham, chicken, and guzzle them down 6 at a time. Even when he was working, Carlton knew he wasn't the only baby food junkie either. He got the tip from a pal on steroids and he told him that dozens of bodybuilders were whacking down baby food. It made sense to him and it helped because it was so quickly digested by the system. But it didn't do a lot for his foul tempers. One day, then he served him up a meal that was about the size of a child's dinner. And he went fucking berserk and yelled at her, "How the fuck am I supposed to live on that?" He hurled the plate across the room and it smashed against the wall. Carlton dragged the fridge out and turned it over and smashed up his kitchen, causing hundreds of pounds for damage. And all for nothing. Just pointless rage. He picked up a baseball bat and was smashing himself across here with it. His rage had reached such ferocity that he feared he would kill Denny if Carlton didn't vent his anger on himself. Another time, Carlton picked up a settee and threw it across the room like it was a kid's toy. Carlton had lost all control of that terrible violence inside him, and his family was suffering. I mean, he put them through hell. He put a gun to Denny's head. Carlton held a fucking knife to her throat. I mean, that's how bad it was. Carlton was a walking time bomb and dangerous to be around. No wonder she eventually kicked him out. At that point in his life, with steroids as his master and vanity as his partner, Carlton was probably the most selfish, horrible person you could ever meet. He was out there with his mates, all 20-stone monsters with 20-inch biceps, and getting a buzz when people looked at him in absolute awe as they walked mob-handed into a club or a pub. Back home, Carlton was on an emotional helter-skelter. Up, down, terrible mood swings, sleepless nights, 4-day nosebleeds, taking coke for the all-night door work, and feeling his blood pressure surging out of control till his head was almost bursting. In short, steroids have left his body f***ed. With fantastic help from Kelly, who's only half his age but twice as strong, Carlton managed to get clean of all illicit drugs. But he still takes pills for blood pressure, his liver is constantly monitored by the doctor, most of his organs have been pushed beyond their limits, and Carlton has probably shortened his life by 10 or 15 years. He could go back into training and could go back on steroids and get back to 17 or 18 stone and look brilliant, but inside, the doctors say he would have the organs of a 60-year-old man. Your heart can only take so much. It's a muscle. And when you use steroids, it grows and grows to keep pace with your physique. You can end up having a heart attack. And when they do the post-mortem, they find out that you've got the heart of an old man and you've worn it out. Carlton owed it to Kelly and his kids to stay clean, stay in control, stay alive. The moment is still vivid in his memory of a day that he had passed the point of no return and given up hope of ever getting his life straight. He'd had a big bust up with Kelly after he dragged her out of a party and terrified the 200 guests so much that even the doorman had locked themselves in the car. Kelly's a really pretty redhead with a lovely slim figure and a great smile. He knew other men looked at her and fancied her. They probably wondered what the hell she was doing with a lump like him twice her age. Carlton should have been proud that she was so attractive to the opposite sex. But the green-eyed monster got the better of him, and all Carlton felt was raging jealousy if another bloke even looked at her. After the party bust up, Kelly didn't want to see him again. No one wanted to know him. He knew he'd gone too far this time. I mean, he's become a wild animal, and people were scared to go near him. Carlton went out and got himself a gun, went to his mum and dad's home, and sat in the box room, absolutely desolate. He sat for an hour looking at the shooter on his lap, then picked it up and put it in his mouth. Carlton thought, F it. I'm fed up with this world. I'm 40 years of age. What have I got? Nothing. He's had 4 serious long-term relationships, nice houses, 4 different kids by different women. What did it all mean now? He felt lonely, a broken man. He reckoned everybody looked on him as a low-life drunk, a no-hoper. And Carlton might as well go and join his fucking mates down the cemetery. Carlton could see no solution other than pull the trigger. He cocked the gun, then a voice told him, no, that's the coward's way out, Carlton. Suddenly he was imagining the horror his parents would suffer if they came home and found him dead with his brain splashed all over the fucking ceiling. The voice in his head was telling him, why not prove everybody wrong? He knew Tony's dad, Ronald, had died there and then from a shock at his home in Folkestone, Kent, when he was told about the Rettendon murders. He was only 63. No age these days for anyone to die. Carlton couldn't bear the thought of that happening to his dear dad. He didn't deserve that. Neither did Mum. And what about his lovely kids? I mean, they couldn't have handled their dad topping himself. Not big, tough dad who always came up with the money at birthday time. Carlton looked at their photos and said, no, this is not the way. He'd always been a fighter, and he would fight his way back from this. For his family, if for anybody else. Carlton knew he had to start again, drag himself up from the pits of despondency and make himself a better man. Nobody could help him but himself. It was time to boot away all that self-pity. Carlton picked himself up, threw the gun away, and headed straight for the doctor's surgery. His grim prognosis was everything he had dreaded. Carry on with your present lifestyle, Mr. Leach, and you are going to die. No beating about the bush, you will die. Now he really needed help. I mean, Carlton was put on a specialist course to dry him out, build him up, cleanse his body of the steroids, cleanse his mind of the depressions and the paranoia. It was many long months before he could see the light at the end of the tunnel and an end to the darkest days of his life. Having cheated death at the business end of Mr. L's Browning and his own shooter in his parents' box room, Carlton now knew that he could have quite easily been the fourth victim in the headline-making Rettendon murders, alongside his best mate Tony Tucker and 2 other members of their firm, Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe, when they were gunned down in that Range Rover. Carlton is still haunted today by the knowledge that his name is on a bullet and someone could be waiting for him any time, any day to finish that job. That's why he lived in a home with secure access only, and when he walked out the door, Carlton would always check that there was no one suspicious hanging around. No coming to take him by surprise. They might be waiting out there for him one dark night, but he won't go down without a fight. I suppose it's the price Carlton had to pay for getting caught up in one of the most notorious multiple murders in England. He was one of the first people hauled in for questioning after the shootings because Carlton hadn't been with the victims. The old Bill thought he must have had something to do with it. He told him that was absolute crap. Tony was a great mate. Why would he want to see him topped? He'll tell you later what he thinks really happened that dreadful night when the boys had their brains blown out. Up till then, they'd been ruling Essex like they owned the place. If anyone tried to cross their paths or move in on their business deals, they'd destroy him. It was a brutal, evil world. And Carlton was fueled up most of the time on a cocktail of booze, drugs, and adrenaline. They thought they were invincible. Carlton was so hyped up, there were times when Carlton thought literally that bullets would bounce off his body. The others were the same. They were all muscled up on steroids to try to look like Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger doing coke and speed, to see him through the night after night without any sleep. Most of the time, the four of them went everywhere together. And he would almost certainly have been in that Range Rover with them on that night. They were shot if they'd have felt they were in some sort of danger. But they hadn't asked. So they must have felt safe. How wrong could they have been? I'm sure Carlton was as much as an intended target as the other three. They wanted the whole firm out the way. They had become wild in the 80s and early 90s. They had a huge network of bodybuilders who worked for them as club doormen, minders and enforcers. Any kind of the rough stuff. By controlling club doors, they could control who was running the drugs inside. And they made dealers cough up £1,000 a time to operate in these venues. They were raking in an absolute fortune and spending it like there was no tomorrow. Life was one long party. They always went out tooled up as well with knuckle dusters, koshes, knives. It was as routine as brushing your teeth. For a really serious job, they think nothing of packing a 9mm pistol. They had respect. Or I suppose I call it fear now. At every place they went into in Essex, nobody messed around with them. Life was a permanent buzz. Carlton had become addicted to violence, the threat of violence, the idea of violence. And there were big drug deals going on. Some Carlton knew about, others he didn't. And all the time, there was this simmering undercurrent of distrust and hatred building up ready to erupt in open warfare. Too many people were taking too many drugs and all sensible reason was out the window. Once they went to buy some nicked travellers checks worth about 250 grand from another firm of villains up in East London. They kept messing them about, changing the dates and times of the meet. So Tony decided to just kidnap the fuckers to teach them a lesson. They arranged a meet up in an out-of-the-way car park in Woodford. Some of them were carrying 9mm guns and the usual assortment of tools. Him and Pat waited until Tony gave a signal, then all hell broke loose. Carlton grabbed the ringleader and pummeled him in the head, while Tony and Pat smashed up the others. Pat started hitting one of the blokes so hard, he sent him flying through the air and onto the roof of a car, setting the alarm off. The lights started going on all around, so they ran to their cars and scarpered, leaving the other lot lying about, battered and bloody. It was all in a typical night's work for the Essex boys. Total disregard for law and order. Carlton will tell you more about the terrifying consequences of this job on another Essex villain much later on. They lived like kings and partied like animals. They spent fortunes on tailor-made clothes. They ran about in Porsches, Mercs, BMWs. And women seemed to be attracted by this aura of violence, and they threw themselves at them everywhere they went. And I mean really good-looking girls, not Essex girl slappers. Pat Tate's appetite for sex was legendary. He'd just been released from prison once when a gunman blasted him at his home and badly injured him. He was rushed into hospital, bleeding badly, and put into a ward all rigged up with tubes, bandages and plasters. Still, it didn't stop him wanting his end away. Even when he was in traction, from his bed, he phoned up for hookers to visit him and got up to all sorts. I mean, he thought it was fucking hilarious. They were all pushing the hell up with drugs. And the night Carlton come face to face with Mr. Earls Browning, he was so pumped up on steroids and Carlton thought he could walk through fucking walls. The terrible thing about drugs is that you don't realise when you're on them how stupid they make you. Carlton deserved to be fucking shot that night. He behaved like a fucking lunatic, but that's the way things were. Just one small example of the way that they were all running out of control. They were getting up the noses of a lot of people, but they couldn't see the dangers brewing up all around them. When Carlton first heard that Tony, Pat and Craig had all been wiped out on an Essex farm track just before Christmas 1995, it shook him rigid. He knew he had to take stock of his life, get his head clear of all the shit that was going on in there. It was 3 years before the killers were finally brought to justice, and that gave him time for a long, cold, clinical look at where he was. His best mate was dead. His head was done in with drugs. His liver and kidneys had been f***ed by steroids, and he would need medical treatment for the rest of his life, however long that may be. His marriage was on the rocks, and every relationship he'd ever had was wrecked by philandering and paranoia. Not a great track record. Carlton knew that the men who were convicted of killing the boys Mickey Steele and Jack Williams are banged up for life, but he can't shake the fear that he might be the next one to catch a bullet if old scores are going to be settled. The murders were supposed to have happened after Tony, Pat and Craig had been lured to that farm track on a bogus drug deal. Maybe yes, maybe no. Whatever happened, they paid too great a price. Meanwhile, Carlton was keeping his head down and trying to rebuild the shattered remnants of his life, making sure he was one jump ahead of any that come looking for him. It's been 20 years of violence, from a tear away on the football terraces to becoming a fully fledged football hooligan, and Carlton just wished he could go back and turn back the clock. Maybe if he stayed at the job he was trained for, marine engineering, it might have been different. But he got caught up in the culture of violence, and violence itself is a lethal drug. Carlton chose that world. He had to live with those consequences. It started when a club in Stratford had a doorman knocked out one Friday night, and he had no one to mind the door on a Saturday, and they asked if Carlton fancied it. He'd already got a reputation as a hard-case West Ham supporter, and they knew he could handle himself. Fancy it? Like a duck to water. Terrific. Carlton was 21 years old, fit as a fiddle, and here he was doing door work in a bow tie. Carlton was Jacko. It was like a fantastic, exciting game to him. Then the drug culture arrived in clubland, and the whole world changed, and he'd become trapped in the middle of a vicious spiral of drugs and violence that was to take him to the heights of perceived invincibility and to the depths of total despair. Carlton was lured into this world, strangely, by the supposed safe drug. He was doing door work when the rave party boom came along in the 80s. He remembered looking down on 8,000 people dancing in a warehouse in East London that had been taken over by some underground rave organisers. There were some hard people there, boxers, violent people, soccer hooligans, Carlton knew. But everyone was loving each other. Nobody was giving any bother. And he'd been in clubs with 200 people and been in fights 3 times a night. But now they got this new phenomenon. All these people full of love and peace. It made all the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He'd never experienced a feeling like it. Carlton was in his late 20s by then, and honestly, hand on heart, had never taken a drug of any sort. Look at that mass of people all holding each other in a sort of universal embrace at 4 o'clock in the morning, smiling, happy, kissing and hugging, not wanting to go home. Carlton knew he had to try one. It intrigued him. He wanted to know. That was the night Carlton was seduced by the lady, and his life was about to change forever. His eyes fixed on the strobe lights, and he was tripping. Carlton was in another world. All he wanted to do was talk to people, be nice. The tough soccer lout, the brawny doorman, became a hippie tripper. He was thinking to himself, this is great. Carlton couldn't really explain it. He'd worked in clubs in London, North East, South and West, and everyone was at each other's throats. But this was lovely. I mean, he couldn't believe 8,000 people could be together all night long, and there was no aggro. No wonder the Americans had given the same tablets to their Vietnam veterans to help them conquer the terrible traumas of that war. They were then Class A medically prescribed drugs to help soldiers cope with flashbacks and nightmares, and to date had few side effects. Now they'd arrived in Britain as a party drug, and the crooks were cashing in. It was only a matter of time before bad gear was being produced and someone was going to die. The inevitable happened, and usually it was a pretty girl who took the fatal dose. Then came the death of the ex-policeman's daughter Leah Betts in Essex, and the ecstasy culture was in the headlines. Their firm was being linked to the tragedy amidst a surge of public outrage. If Carlton hadn't taken that tablet, if Carlton had just said no, he doesn't think he'd have taken that path that he did. He would not have got mixed up in the drug world and never done the terrible things that he did. It was probably the most stupid thing Carlton ever did. But because he started taking it, somehow he convinced himself that it was right. From a £40 a nightclub doorman, Carlton was suddenly in the drug scene, big time, with money sloshing about everywhere, looking after rave promoters, loads of drink, unlimited ease, and slowly but surely, the door was being opened up to bigger and seedier things. Then came the big stepping stone to the heavier stuff, and the gang wars and the violence, and then murder. And it could have all been avoided if he turned his back on one small pill. Whatever the experts say, there's no doubt in his mind that one drug leads to another. Up and up the ladder you go till all you can do is fall off. He's been there, seen it, done it. He could have had that ultimate buzz and then gone looking for something better, something new. Now it sickens him. He'll never forget the day just before the murders when he went to his mate Tony's house and saw him out of his head injecting cocaine into his vein. He was a man who was so proud of his body, a fitness fanatic, and there he was pulling down his shirt sleeves, trying to hide 30 needle holes from him. Carlton was shocked, but then he's got no room to criticise. Carlton was on steroids for years, and in his opinion, they were the worst drugs of all by far. The emotional and physical side effects are catastrophic. You can become impotent, or you can go the other way and become a sex addict, like me. That's the way he went. Carlton became a rampant super stud. He wanted to 8, 9 or 10 times a day. He had 2 girls on the go at the same time, but still wasn't satisfied. That caused problems with relationships when he started looking elsewhere. He was a horrible, revolting, sexual predator, but couldn't see it. Carlton saw 6 or 7 mates die in the last 6 years. He's seen a lot of things and done a lot of things. He's been to so many funerals. Now he's won his toughest battle and got clean of drugs, and for the sake of his kids and his girlfriend and the few people who still believe in him, he's got to make sure his funeral is not the next one.
And that's where we're leaving it for now. But trust me, if you think this was mad, you ain't seen nothing yet. The next chapter, it's chaos, carnage, and consequences all rolled into one. Carlton and the boys are about to step into something that they can't just walk away from. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you on the other side.